Hey, good day to you. This is Stan Prochowski with Prochowski Estate Law, and this is the Ask Stan show every Thursday at 12 noon, where I answer all your estate planning questions submitted throughout the week. If you have a question about wills, trusts, Medicaid pre-planning, Medicaid crisis planning, the nursing home, or just estate planning in general, just send them to me here on Facebook or call me at 363-7222 or email me at prochowskiestatelaw@gmail.com. I'll answer them live on WKSR Radio, and we post them here on the Ask Stan show every Thursday. So, let's get right to it. We're going to talk about kids this morning, a little bit about guardianship. They got to be taken care of, and by golly, it seems like they can't get them to stay in school, can they? If it's not COVID, then it's the weather. We've had our share of that this year. So, hey, listen, I'm going to tell a story, and like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about minor children and guardianship. And I think about this now a lot. I told you last week I found out I was going to be a grandfather. So I think about that. So if you're listening and you think, all my kids are adults, I don't really need to hear about guardianship. Stay with me a little bit on this because, my kids are all adults, but I now am having to have an adult child who has a minor child, right? So if you're in that situation, you should be able to relate. So I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell it a little bit differently. This is a factual story. I'm going to try and use as many facts as I can remember about it. But you got this couple, relatively young. They've got a child. They love him to death. Son. I think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like any parent, they play with the child. He's good at baseball. They love him to death. They're convinced he's probably going to be a genius. That sort of thing. Then they get pregnant with another, and they wonder if they're going to ever have enough love to love the new child as much as they love the other one. But God has thought of that a long time ago, and they find that there's no shortage of love in their hearts, and they love the second child every bit as much as the first. And they're both working parents, so they. The wife is enough, she can work at home, but they've got enough means that when they want to start selecting somebody to watch the children while they go to work, they are very picky. They interview tons of people, and they finally pick one that they really like. They pick we'll call her Susan, and they finally pick Susan to be their babysitter. She's about 20 years old. She's great with kids. They trust her. So one day, here's the what-if scenario. Someday, the husband has a job in marketing. He often travels and is out of town, and he is at this point in time. And the wife has a client meeting, about a 3-hour client meeting at the client's office. And so she goes to the meeting and finds out it's been postponed for one reason or another. She wasn't told, so she says, I'll make good use of my time, so I'm going to go down to the gym and work out for an hour. So she tries calling home with her cell phone, and the line's busy. And so she says, make a mental note to call, after I work out because you can't have cell phones in the gym. It's like Planet Fitness or something where you're not allowed to make noise. So she puts her phone on silent, puts it in the gym bag, is in the gym, puts her stuff into the locker, gets on a treadmill, and, starts thinking about the kids, but thinks, I trust Susan. She's a good babysitter, so I'm going to try not to worry about it. And all of a sudden, the unthinkable happens. And that is, she's got this aneurysm in her head that's been there for years and years. And it just decides to go. And, she didn't know it was there. She didn't see it coming. Never had any. It was hidden. It was unknown. And it just happened. Okay. So, of course, the people at the gym call 911 when this happens, but they can't figure out who this person is because her gym membership, her ID, and her cell phone are in a bag, locked in a locker somewhere that's unmarked, and she's incapacitated. And so they try to figure out who she is. They call the ambulance. And they take her off. And the mother passes away from the aneurysm. Of course, later on they find out that there's nothing could have been done. It was just a ticking time bomb. It could have happened when she was at home with the kids. It could have happened while she was. It had nothing to do with the workout. It could have happened at any time. So let's go back to Susan. She's at home and she knows the mother's supposed to be back around 3 o'clock. Well, hours go by and she's not home, and she keeps calling her and keeps getting voicemail, and it's very unlike the mother to not answer the phone. So she starts getting worried. She knocks on the neighbor's door. They don't answer. She calls the client. The client says, never had the meeting. It was canceled. So now she's starting to panic, and she's trying not to let the two kids see that she's panicked. So she's calling around, trying to find her. Can't find her. Of course, can't get a hold of the husband. He's completely out, somewhere else, in another state, another city. So now the story is, I'm going to tell the story with two endings. I'm going to kind of diverge now. What does Courtney's in a quandary right now, right?
Well, if the babysitter can't contact the mother or father, what happens to the kids?
Well, good question. And everybody out there listening is probably thinking the same thing. What's going to happen? Well, let me go through two scenarios. Let's just assume scenario one is that, and we'll come back to this spot when we take the other scenario. Let's assume that Susan, the babysitter, decides to call the police because she's panicked and doesn't know what to do. Hours have gone by. So she calls the police. Of course, the police respond. The police are going to ask a bunch of questions like, who are you? And I'm the babysitter. I'm taking care of the children. Can't get a hold of the mother. They can't find the mother. They're looking. So the police pretty much say, okay, we've got this. We can take care of this. You can leave now. The babysitter says, no, I'm going to stay with these children because they know me. They trust me. And children don't want to go anywhere. And they said, that's all right. Protective services will come in. Now, nothing about this story is negative toward protective services because those folks, they're trained professionals and they know how to treat children. But it's more toward the perspective of these minor children. Because they can't get a hold of the parents, they have no choice procedurally. By law, they have to put them in some kind of custody. And usually they'll look around to see if there's immediate family members, but in this situation there was not. So they put them in protective custody. Now just imagine being these two kids. You're being taken away by people you don't know. You don't know what happened to mom. Nobody's telling you anything. You're scared. Your world's turning upside down. And young children are such creatures of habit that when this happens to them, it's pretty traumatic. So they eventually verified with the hospital that the youth passed away. So I'm telling this as a first-person story as the mother. So they find out that you passed away. They eventually contact the father. The father comes back. Of course, he has to deal with the funeral and dealing with you. It takes a little while for him to get full custody back, not custody, but full get the children restored to him. And nothing. The children are kind of never the same. I could go on and on about that. It just depends on how long they're in custody. And if you want to actually interject the fact that suppose the mother was a single parent, which we see so much of, there is no other parent to come and actually take control of the children after this person gets back. So it's something you want to avoid. Now, I want to back up a little bit to what should the babysitter do when she can't find anything. So suppose you had, when the children were young, you had a lot of forethought and you thought, what if something happens to us? We don't want our children to go in any kind of the custody of strangers for not even a single minute. And so, you put together guardianship papers. Or, what we do at my law firm is the Children Protection Program, where we put together guardianship papers. We actually break it down into temporary guardianship and permanent guardianship. So now the babysitter has these instructions. The instructions are not to call the police first. Contact one of the temporary guardians, which could be a family member down the street or a neighbor, and get them, and they'll show up with the authority to take control of these children, which the babysitter doesn't have.
Stan, you mentioned the guardian papers there. What if he have an agreement with a friend or relative that they'll care for the kids? Does that work?
Well, legally, no. I mean, if it's like an oral agreement, if Aunt Gertrude says, oh, that's okay, if anything happens, I'll take care of the children. I mean, she could end up taking care of the children, but it doesn't happen by itself. In other words, the agreement has to be memorialized. And because when all guardianship ends up with a court order, meaning, but with the way we structure it is if you go to that statute, the court has to give great weight to anybody you selected during life to be a guardian ahead of time. Now, the court takes into consideration that you have done that, you've thought about it, you selected this person, you obviously knew them and trusted them, and that's who you wanted to take care of the children. So they have to give that great weight. And anybody coming in that wants to try to supersede that and throw their hat in the ring and say, well, we want the children, they've got to overcome that. They've got to rebut that. And it's a tough road to hoe. So we structure it so it works out the way that you want. But let's get back to the scenario. Now she calls a temporary guardian. They come, they're within 20 minutes of response time. They show up. They have a paper in hand. They have the actual authority under law to keep these children and make decisions for them. And now it may be time to call the police. When the police come, they're going to say, what's going to happen? What do we do with these children? Well, we have guardianship in place. The police are more than happy. They're happy to see that because it's something they don't have to deal with. They don't like putting kids in custody more than anybody else would. Now, now you may have some permanent guardians that don't live nearby. It's going to take them, a couple of weeks or so to get things together and have the children actually come live with them for long-term care if the other parent's not around. So really, I'm not doing the story justice by squeezing it in a short period of time, but you can see that one way is a lot smoother. Now, the story, no matter how I tell it, can't fix the loss of the mother. I can't fix the fate of the mother. But you can see what we can fix is the trauma and the fear and the uncertainty and the experience that those minor children have to go through if something like this happens. And one of the reasons I bring this up is I told you, because I found out I was going to be a grandfather, but we've had a week or 2 weeks where we've done several plans for, kind of relatively young couples that have minor children. We did guardianship for it. Those folks, they should, feel good and rest easy about that. But, if you're out there listening, if you have minor children or you have adult children have minor children, ask this question of yourself or of them and say, have you named guardians for your minor children? I'll bet you the overwhelming response is no, because it's a very overlooked part of estate planning when you have minor children. So it needs to be addressed.
Stan, I'm sure you've seen this in your practice before. If someone is willing to care for your kids, but they have limited financial means, how can you fix that?
Well, here's the thing. If you're a responsible parent, the good thing to do is take out life insurance. Now, life insurance really is, think of it this way. It's a way for, at least financially, for something to step in your shoes and pick up where you're going. I mean, nobody can replace you, but at least financially there'll be the wherewithal to take care of these children. Now, when you have guardianship and you have a parent that's gone, and there's, if somebody was smart enough and has a nice $200,000 or $300,000 life insurance policy, unfortunately, some people will be a little more willing to take the children if that comes along with them. Now, the reason for that, if you have a guardian, you're going to leave them 3 children. It's kind of a financial burden to deal with 3 new children. God bless them if they're willing to take them on. You ought to at least help them out financially. So that's what that's for. But unfortunately, a direct result of that is you get a lot of folks that are a little more interested in the insurance policy than they are with the children, but you can't take it part and parcel. You fix it with life insurance, but you also fix it to be the person you want with the guardianship documentation. So we've done a lot of that in the last couple of weeks. If you haven't thought about guardianship, please do. Put yourself in that story where you're one of the children. Just think how scary that must be. It gives me goosebumps to think about a child not knowing what happened to the mother, and just being taken away out of their environment, no explanation. And even if you did tell them, they probably wouldn't understand. They just default to fear, crying. Don't put them through it. They don't need to be in custody of strangers for a single minute. It's a simple thing to plan for, and once you've done it, it's done. So it's come see me if that interests you. We do the Children's Protection Program, which is the full set of guardianship papers, a lot of instructions to babysitters, a whole lot. Make it part of your estate plan. We talk about what's going to happen to your property. That's always a subject for another radio show. But what's going to happen to those minor children ought to be something that wakes you up in the middle of the night.
All right, Stan, good segment this morning. Stan Perchowski Estate Law. Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
I got to go out in the rain. Since I sponsor the weather.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you think I'll get wet?
Kind of your fault a little bit. Stan, have a great day. And Alexis in here, she's kind of behind the scenes filming stuff that you put online, and we appreciate her being here this morning too.
Thanks, Butch.
All right.